أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
الحمد لله. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه ملء السماوات وملء الأرض وملء ما بينهما وملء ما شاء من شيء بعد. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. بعد. Dear brothers and sisters, this khutbah, the third khutbah of today, is a special khutbah that is only once every quarter, 4 times a year. So I apologize for those who didn't see the announcement that went out this week and were expecting the Arabi khutbah. But 4 times a year, we have a special khutbah that we do as part of our Muhsin certification. I'll explain what that is. Before we talk about that topic, though, a couple of important reminders to let you know that, first of all, our Imam, Sheikh Abdul Mun'im, is traveling in Egypt visiting his family. So please keep him in your dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps him safe and returns him to us safely. Inshallah, he will be back with us by the time of Eid. A reminder that, of course, Eid is coming up soon, so an encouragement, if you haven't yet made your udhiyah, your sacrifice, to please do so. It's so easy for us nowadays. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it so easy for us. Certainly you can go and perform the slaughter on the day of Eid yourself, but it's so easy if you're unable to do so, you just have to go online and find a charity. There's so many of them that will do it for you just by paying the cost. So if you can afford it, of course do so. And a reminder, of course, for the day of Arafah to fast the day of Arafah if you're able. And inshallah, we will have Salat al-Eid. You'll see the announcements coming out soon, but Salat al-Eid will be downtown at the convention center rather than here at the masjid. There'll be one Salat al-Eid downtown at the convention center instead of multiple Eid here, similar to how we used to do at the expo. Another announcement, very important to remind you all, and I know I'm taking time out of the khutbah, but it's that important, is to remind you that COVID is still with us. COVID is still here. And if you haven't heard the news and you're not aware, there's a variant of COVID, a mutant, the Delta variant, which is now the predominant strain here in the United States, meaning that the majority of new cases now are Delta variant. And this is a variant that is more contagious, and people get more sick if they catch the Delta strain. So COVID is still here, so that's why we're still wearing masks inside of the masjid. For those who are not comfortable praying shoulder to shoulder, we reserved the library where you can pray with distancing. But most importantly, if you haven't been vaccinated yet, go and get vaccinated. Get the vaccine. So far, the estimate is that only about half of the population in Ohio has been vaccinated. That's not good. especially with the Delta variant coming. The vaccines appear to be, according to all of the data, the literature that's coming out, all evidence shows that the vaccines do protect against the Delta variant, either that it prevents you from getting it, or if you get it, that it will be a more mild infection, not something where you'll end up in the hospital or, sick and die. So if you haven't been vaccinated, go and get the vaccine. It's free. It's very easy to find a place to get it now. It's very easily accessible. You don't have to pay anything for it. Get vaccinated and get your family, friends, everyone you know vaccinated. Please, for the sake of yourself, your family, and our community. Because the last thing we want, of course, is to be passing the virus between us. We do know that those who are vaccinated can still pass the virus, so you can still get infected with the Delta variant in particular, and you can pass it to somebody, and if that person's not vaccinated, that person could die of it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. So please get vaccinated. Jazakumullahu khairan. So as I mentioned, this khutbah is about is in relation to our Muhsin certification as a community, as a masjid. And for those who are not aware, Muhsin certification has to do with our community's dedication towards awareness and making special arrangements for people with disabilities in our community. So the Muhsin stands for Muslims understanding and helping special education needs. That's Muhsin. It's an acronym, of course. But essentially the idea again is that we have, as a masjid, as a community, have made the commitment to increase our awareness and provisions that we make for those who have special needs, those with disabilities, special needs. And of course we know that disabilities is a wide category. There are a lot of different types of disabilities. They could be physical disabilities, they could be cognitive disabilities, they could be something that somebody was born with, like developmental delay or some birth injury, or it could be something that somebody got later in life, like somebody may have lost their sight, somebody may have had a stroke, somebody may have Alzheimer's disease and is losing their ability to understand. All sorts of different disabilities. And our community, of course, is as susceptible to any of these possibilities and has the same people who have these disabilities as any other community. And so we need to be, as Muslims, we need to be sensitive, aware, and make whatever provisions we can, particularly here in the masjid, but everywhere. So the purpose of Muhsin certification for us as a community, as a masjid, is to improve our awareness and to work with the organization called Muhsin to know what we should be doing, because sometimes we're just not sensitive to the issues that our brothers and sisters who have disabilities may have. And so the Muhsin organization helps us as a community to make those provisions that are necessary to welcome those with special needs and to make all the needed provisions to allow them to be a part of our community and to attend all of our functions and salah and everything. So beyond just the concept of awareness, though, obviously I don't want to spend this khutbah, and of course because this khutbah is quarterly, that we have a special khutbah as part of our Muhsin certification to address issues that are relevant to those with special needs. We don't want it every time, 4 times a year, just to remind you that, hey, we have people in our community with disabilities, so be nice to them. That's not the point. We have to go beyond that. And so inshallah we can make this khutbah beneficial to us to increase our understanding. And of course the purpose of the khutbah and the purpose of why we come to Salat al-Jum'ah and the reason why we pray together and come for khutbah every week is for the sake of guidance and to get ourselves closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I would tell you that our attention to those people in our community with special needs is a prime opportunity for us to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in multiple ways, and we'll talk about it, inshallah. But first, I want to remind us that we all have abilities. We all have abilities. We're able to do certain things, and you know many of the things that you're able to do. But perhaps you haven't really thought about in detail, what are all of the things that I'm able to do? There's some simple ones that may come to your mind immediately. If I say, what abilities do you have? You may say, oh, well, I know how to read and write. You know, my profession is so and so, so I have, the knowledge to do my profession, whatever it is. I know how to do math because I'm an engineer, whatever it is. You may have a certain set of abilities that just come to your mind immediately. But if you really took some time and you really said, okay, let me really think about what are my abilities, I guarantee you that you could probably spend hours and you still wouldn't run out. You could literally spend hours and you wouldn't run out of abilities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. Some of them are very simple, like, well, I have the ability to see. What a blessing. Not all of our brothers and sisters have the ability to see. Some of our brothers and sisters were able to see, and maybe they got cataracts and they couldn't afford to have the surgery to fix it. They can't see now. Some of them may have had stroke or some kind of injury, something that took away their sight. Some are born without vision. So of course, just the vision, just our sight, is a huge blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and is an ability that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with among countless abilities. So recognizing and remembering the abilities that we have is a way to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I encourage us all to take advantage of the opportunity. Sometime when you have a free moment, it's quiet, nobody's around, maybe after some salah that you're praying at home, maybe in the middle of the night you're making qiyam al-layl, just take a moment and think about what are all of the abilities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me. And it's not just from the perspective of being grateful for it, because there's something else that comes with abilities, which we'll talk about in a moment. In addition to that, we all have inabilities. Now, if I asked you, what's the opposite of ability? If you said disability, I would say, no, actually, that's not true. The opposite of ability is inability. So we all have abilities and we all have inabilities, and many of us have disabilities. But we all have inabilities, meaning that there are certain things that we can't do. And again, we know what some of these things are. Now, some of them may be silly. For example, I can't fly. I don't have wings, I can't fly around, I'm not Superman. So I'm unable to fly. Well, neither are any of you as far as I know. But we have abilities and we have inabilities. And again, there are some among us who have disabilities. But even those of us who have disabilities, just like all of us who have inabilities, everyone has inabilities. We're unable to do certain things, and yet we still have plenty of abilities. And in the same way, those of us who have disabilities still have plenty of abilities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed them with. Some have more than others. Some of us have more abilities than others, even if we don't have a disability. So alhamdulillah, I'm looking out at everyone here, and I would guess that the majority of people here don't have a disability. Now, not all disabilities can be seen. Some disabilities might have to do, for example, with mental health. Some disabilities may be, for example, someone may have dyslexia. They're not able to read and write because their brain doesn't register numbers and letters the way that it's supposed to. Well, I can't look at somebody and see that they have dyslexia or some type of mental health issue, for example. But I would guess that the majority of the people here don't have a disability, but you all have inabilities. And yet, you still have tons and tons of abilities. And in the same way, those of our brothers and sisters who have disabilities still have tons and tons of abilities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed them with. Now, the abilities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with, don't think that they're just gifts and here, go have this and go do whatever you want with it. Because we know that that's not the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know that this life is not just meant for enjoyment, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just gives you a bunch of stuff and go have fun and that's it. You're not held accountable for it. We know again that the purpose of this life is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this life as a test, as an opportunity to use our life and our gifts and the resources He's given us and the guidance that He's given us as opportunities to get closer to Him. And those of us who die as Muslims, and the closer we can become to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout our lifetime, Those are the ones who are successful. The abilities that we have, yes, it's an opportunity for us to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by remembering those abilities and being grateful for them. Absolutely. And this honestly is the minimum we should do. Minimum. If we didn't do that, then I would argue that we have been unjust. If at the very least we didn't remember the ability and be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that ability. But then even beyond that, with every ability that we have comes a responsibility. A responsibility for how are you going to use that ability? Now maybe this sounds weird, maybe it's a foreign concept, doesn't quite add up, it's not making sense. So let me give you an example that I'm sure will make perfect sense. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the gift of certain abilities in the same way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given some of us wealth and has given us, some of us, more wealth than others. And there are some of us who are very wealthy, some who have just enough, some who are poor, don't have enough for their needs and their family's needs. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives wealth in different amounts to different people. Now, did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give the wealthy person, give them all that money and then just do whatever you want with it and there's no accountability for it? There's no responsibility that came with that wealth? I'm sure all of you know the answer. That person will be held to account for that wealth. And even the Prophet ﷺ told us a special accounting for the wealth, because it's not just what he did with the wealth, but also where he got the wealth too. Where he got the wealth and what he did with the wealth, this is going to be asked of us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he gives someone wealth, there's a responsibility that comes with that wealth. We know what that responsibility is. At the very minimum, to pay your zakah. But then, inshallah, you're also paying sadaqah. Inshallah, you're also helping out your family members who maybe don't have enough. Your extended family, maybe some of you have family back home. You send money overseas. If you are, you're fulfilling the responsibility that comes with that gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you of wealth. And in the same way that we can very easily understand that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses someone with wealth, there's an expectation that comes with it. In the same way, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us an ability, a physical ability, a mental ability, whatever it is, it's a responsibility, it's a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So how are we going to use it? And again, it's not just being grateful. Yes, we need to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it. But in addition, we need to use it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Use it in a way to help other people. Use it in a way that is halal, at the very least, not in a way that's haram. For example, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you intelligence, and when I say intelligence, I don't mean that your IQ is 200. I mean, even if he just gave you a normal amount of intelligence, the ability just to do daily things like most people can do, so you don't have a disability, for example, when it comes to your ability to think and understand things. If you have that intelligence and you use it to cheat and steal and get get wealth in a haram way, or you lie and you take advantage of people, if that's the way that you use your intelligence, then you have betrayed the trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you by giving you that ability to think, that beautiful blessing and gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives those of us who have the ability to think. Same thing with physical. Same thing with physical gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you the physical ability to help other people, then do it. Take advantage of that blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. Maybe, for example, you have some expertise to repair certain things. You know how to repair, furnaces and air conditioning units and whatever. Alhamdulillah, most people don't have that. Maybe you know how to repair cars. You see somebody broken on the side of the road and you stop and you fix their car so they can go home. That's a blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give you, an advantage, a blessing, an ability that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you that most of us don't have. If my car breaks down, I'm useless. Can't do anything about it. I need help. I'm helpless. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us abilities, it's a responsibility for us. And it's an opportunity for us to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like your wealth. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you wealth, and you use that wealth in a way that you know is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's an opportunity to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, if you do the opposite, and you use that wealth in something haram, then it takes you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we all know that there are people who were given blessings that on the surface seem like they would be great to have, and yet it takes them away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there, for example, you know people who were good Muslims and coming to the masjid, and then all of a sudden their business started to take off. They got busy. They were making a lot of money. They don't have time to come to the masjid anymore. Is that actually good for them? So, you know what? Maybe, Allahu A'lam, maybe they were better off having less money, less business, less customers, and coming to the masjid. Now they don't even have time to come to Jumaa because their business, they're making so much money that, oh, if I skip my business Friday to go to Jumaa, I'm going to lose $10,000, $100,000. Well, that person probably was better off before. So we know that sometimes when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a gift, it's a test that may take us away from Him if we don't use it properly. So in the same way, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you abilities, use those for His sake. Use those in ways that will get you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now what about the poor person? Again, to use the analogy to make it make sense, what about the poor person who doesn't have wealth? That person wasn't given the gift of wealth that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to some other people. But again, we know that there are people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the wealth and it got them closer to Him because they spent it in His cause. And there were people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them wealth and it was a harm to them. They failed the test. What about the poor person who didn't get the wealth? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't give it to them. Should they be upset? Should they be angry? Should they be resentful of the people who got the wealth? Should they complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Why didn't you give me wealth? Of course not. They should be trusting of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that their poverty may be the cause that gets them to Jannah. Isn't that the final goal that we're trying to reach? We're trying to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to love and be pleased with us so that we can make it to Jannah and be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Salihin and the Shuhada. That's our goal. That's what we're trying to achieve. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to you today, if He made a deal with you and said, look, I can make you rich in this life and you can have as much money as you want, or I'm going to make you poor, but it's going to be your path to Jannah, which one would you choose? I think all of us would agree that, yeah, if that poverty is going to be my path to Jannah, then I'm going to choose that poverty. Well, in the same way that I'm making the analogy of wealth with abilities, in the same way, the lack of wealth is similar to our inabilities and for those of us who have disabilities. Those could be the pathway for us to Jannah. And just like you, as somebody who, inshallah, has enough wealth, and let's be honest, brothers and sisters, the poorest among us, the poorest person in this room, or in this masjid, the poorest person in this masjid, compared to the rest of the world, is a king. So we have to be honest. The poorest person in this masjid, compared to the rest of the world, is living like a king. Because think about it, even if you don't have enough money to pay your rent and you're just barely paying for this and that and whatever, and just think about all of the blessings that we have, the poorest person among us living here, compared to the rest of the world. Even if somebody is having a hard time paying their bills and whatever, they still have running water in their house. They probably still have electricity unless they couldn't afford the bill. They still have access to grocery stores on every corner where there's food from all over the world and all sorts of things that the rest of the world doesn't have. Alhamdulillah, we're very blessed. We're living in a country of excess. And again, we're going to be asked about it. It's a trust. It's a responsibility. But just like any of us wouldn't look at a poor person and think badly of them. So if we, for example, we see that there's poor people, maybe you get some email or something comes in the mail asking you to donate for the people in Gaza, for example. There's all sorts of places around the world. Similar situation, Yemen and everywhere, and Africa and so many places. When you open that envelope and you look at that advertisement asking you to give a donation, you don't look at the pictures of these poor children who are starving and say, oh, look at those people. I'm much better than them. Of course not. You would never do such a thing. Because you recognize that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with wealth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you to live in a country of excess. And there are other people who are less fortunate, don't have that. But again, those people, their difficulties, their challenges, their suffering, their poverty or whatever they're dealing with, their oppression, depending on where they're living, if they're in Kashmir or China, wherever they are, these Muslims, that may be their path to Jannah. So to be honest with you, really, in a way, we should be jealous of them. In a way, we should be jealous with those people. Jealous of those people. So when we see a brother or sister who has a disability, again, we don't look down on them. We don't think, oh, look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me the ability that that person doesn't have. So that person, I'm better than that person. No, of course not. That person's disability may be their pathway to Jannah. So unfortunately, our time is running short, but inshallah, we'll try to wrap up in the second khutbah. What are some things that we can, inshallah, do to recognize our abilities, our inabilities, our disabilities, all for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفر الله إنه غفور رحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So again, as I mentioned, for those who came late, this khutbah is a quarterly khutbah having to do with our Muhsin certification as a community. We are dedicated to giving 4 khutbahs a year that address disabilities, special needs, as a part of our commitment as a community and our dedication to being a community that is open, friendly, and accommodating to all of those who have special needs and disabilities. But again, our reminder for today is not just for those with disabilities. And it's not just a reminder to remind you that, hey, look, there are people with disabilities, so be grateful that you don't have a disability. No, that would be, just way down here. We need to rise above that and open our minds and think bigger than that. So my reminder again to you today is to recognize your abilities, the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, and be grateful for them as a minimum. But then think about, how am I using these abilities for the sake of Allah? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me a mind and the ability to read and write and the ability to do whatever your profession is and the ability to walk, the ability to run maybe, the ability to play a certain sport, whatever it is. Your health, whatever it is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you abilities. How are you using those abilities for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And if you have certain inabilities, or you're among those in our community who have disabilities, again, remember that this could be your path to Jannah. It could be your path to Jannah. So those of us who have disabilities should not focus on those. They should recognize that no matter what our disabilities are, all of us, whatever our inabilities and disabilities are, we still have tons of abilities. Just like the person who doesn't have wealth, that's one thing they don't have, but how many things other than that do they have? So rather than focusing on a lack of wealth, the poor person should focus on, well, what do I have? I have parents, I have my health, I have, whatever things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed them with, and their patience with their lack of wealth could be their path to Jannah. In the same way, we should focus on our abilities and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with, use those for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then whatever things we haven't been blessed with shouldn't be something that detracts us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but should additionally be opportunities for us to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because at the end of the day, again, our goal is to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and a big part of that is to have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to trust that whatever abilities He's given us, whatever blessings, gifts He's given us, are the best for us. We use it for His sake, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us those things as a test and as an opportunity to earn His pleasure. And the things that He hasn't given us, maybe those things were worse for us, or maybe the fact that we don't have those things is our path to Jannah. Our patience with them and our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may be our path to Jannah. So again, this is a reminder for us, but inshallah, we will have quarterly khutbahs to remind us about these very important topics that we as a community need to be sensitive to and need to be aware of. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وأقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Please fill the gaps shoulder to shoulder. Don't leave any spaces. And please set your phones to mute or vibrate or turn them off, whatever it is. Jazakumullahu khairan. Allahu Akbar. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. والتين والزيتون وطور سينين وهذا البلد الأمين لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم ثم رددناه أسفل سافلين إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات فلهم أجر غير ممنون فما يكذبك بعد بالدين أليس الله بأحكم الحاكمين. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا